Hi, I have a few things I want to say about your critiques. First of all, um, please remember to to contact me during normal Delta business hours. If you are going to contact me late in the day, like after 4 o'clock, most days, I'm not going to get back to remind or raise your hand till the next day. On Fridays, it's usually before noon. So when you use that, you need to work ahead. You need to think about um, your assignments before they're due on Friday. When you do that, you're not giving yourself the time needed to complete these writing assignments. The best way to do writing assignments is to do them early in the week, put them aside, and come back to them later in the week to see what kind of changes you want to make, because your paper looks differently after a couple days off. If you're saying, I'm just too busy to do that, well, okay, then that's fine. That's your priority. Unfortunately, I think your grade may reflect that. Writing is not something that you can learn by starting at 8 o'clock on Friday night, having a bunch of questions, and turning it in by 11:59 p.m. It just takes longer than that. Second thing I want to comment on the critique is about 5 of you put it in the wrong place. You need to go to each week, and I'll show you again in a minute. You need to go to each week and find the weekly assignments. Next week will be from next Monday, which is the 10th, July 10th through 15, and 14, July 10th through 14, and click the assignments there. If you're going to Dropbox, or if you're going to discussions, you're going to you might not find the right Dropbox, and 5 of you didn't. I emailed you this morning about it, and I did give you a grade, and I did read it. I wasn't going to, but please do not let it happen again. Some comments on, another big problem with some of the critiques is you did not show me through track changes, the changes you made. I can't evaluate your critique when you do that. You needed to turn on track changes, and there was a video as to how to do that, and actually use track changes to make your revisions. Most of you did very well in re-seeing your document, revising your document, and seeing where different paragraphs needed to be adjusted, words taken out, sentences taken out, things added into it. Some of you just only corrected surface errors. And by surface errors, I mean, where commas go, or changing a word that isn't the best word for the paper. I'm looking for major changes. I'm looking for your second draft, which will be due next Friday, to be very different. Unless I said to you on your very first draft that you didn't need a whole lot of changes. The other thing is, in the track changes, those of you that did it, I saw a few questions for me. I saw a lot of changes, which was good, but don't forget that I was going to read those comments and I was going to answer. Some people did have a question and I did answer them, but a lot of you didn't. I also want to review with you some of the things that I said on your papers that I want to talk about the changes. I want you to learn some of these skills. Many of you, I've written about passive voice. What is passive voice? And many of you were starting sentences with it's There are, there is, this is, that is. Chances are you don't need it. And I took an example from a paper, and basically what you need to do is get rid of that phrase and then rework the sentence. The individual must learn to work on their toes and develop the proper skills to handle these situations on the spot. I would also find something that's a little bit more formal for here and for here. But what I did want to show you, of course, is watch those it is, there are constructions and get rid of them and rework the sentence. You're eliminating the passive voice, and what you're doing is getting a very good solid sentence with a very good subject, a solid subject, okay? The other thing I want to notice in this sentence, when it was in its original, it said the individual, and then we've got their toes. Why? And this is singular. There is plural because it means more than one person's toes, right? So what you need to do, if you're going to leave that phrase, you need to make it the individuals must learn to work on their toes. So we have proper subject pronoun agreement. It's called the pronoun and its antecedent have to be the same number. If you'd said he must learn to work, it should be his toes. If you even said they must learn to work, it's their toes. Students must learn to work, it's their toes. It's a good practice to make it plural. That way you don't get into worrying about, if you do say the individual, whether you should use his or her. In the second one, again, I'm showing you an example of passive voice, but it doesn't use is or are or has, or it just says this example shows. That's not needed there. All you need to say is you get rid of it, okay? It's deleted. And all you need to do is start with a capital U. Universities are afraid to let people share their opinions in front of students, blah, 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 the rest of it, okay? That way, it's a stronger sentence. You get to the point quicker. Universities are afraid, and it does relate back to this. You don't have to worry about having, referring back to this. We know you're referring back to this because you are putting a sentence right after it. The next thing I want to talk about is MLA citation for your papers. The first thing you need to do is you need to start that on a new page. And to do that, I think you go to layout, is that it? Yep, break and page break. And then you put the citation on the other side. Now, works cited needs to be centered. So I'm going to center it. And this whole page needs to be double spaced. So I'm going to go to lines, to spacings. And then the second line has to have what's called a hanging indent. And again, I'm going to go to line spacing options, and where it says indentation, special, you want hanging. And you click OK, and you've got your hanging indent. The other thing is, if you've copied and pasted this from Microsoft Word or something online where you got the citation, that's perfectly okay, except you need to change this to Times New Roman. All your papers for MLA must be in Times New Roman. Let me find it. Where did it go? I'm sorry, I'm being silly. Times New Roman and 12-point type, so that's all in the same type. The first time you talked about new subject, I'm sorry, I made an abrupt thing there. According to Parker in her article, when you start with that, that's great. But the first time you do it, you need to put in the title of the article. And you don't put title of the article, but you put in the actual title. And it goes in parentheses. Parentheses after, or not parentheses, I'm sorry, quotation marks, okay? And you put that in so that you have, you just don't have to worry. You can refer back to Parker or to her in that paragraph, and then in the next paragraph you can just say, Parker, you know everything about where that article came from. When you use this kind of opening, or you just say, Parker writes that, whatever she says, okay? You should have the page number at the end, but since there's no pages on the internet, don't worry about it, and just make sure that you say Parker. If you don't say Parker and you paraphrase something like trigger warnings can be posted, and I'm paraphrasing, near the classroom or auditorium, then you're going to put Parker because you didn't mention her in that sentence. I don't know why I did this last one. That was the wrong one. I'm sorry, and I apologize. We don't want that one. So I did want to explain that to you about different things. Pronoun antecedent agreement, passive voice, citations, and how to do the works cited page. I'm not done yet. I'm sorry. This is a long one. I want to go to e-learning. And once again show you, once I get into the class, go to content to find your assignments. This week was right here. If you had, first of all, if you had read everything here, and you could have downloaded the document that showed you how to find your comments. It was right there. I'm sorry the link I put in didn't work. I've since deleted it. But please be sure to read what I say here before you go here. And if you're just going to course schedule, you're not going to get the instruction. You're just going to get what it is you have to do. Please go to content. Please go to read everything that's there, not just once, but twice. This way you get into the right discussion board. If you click here, okay. Oops, yeah, that's right. You get into the right Dropbox. You also see that you should have began thinking about reading Blur. You would have missed that because it's not in the assignment. and you would have been able to read what's going to be due on the 14th, 21st, 28th, and then August 4th and August 11th. Now for next week, I know this is a long one, but just bear with me on this. For next week, you have a blur log due. Now that's not going to show in schedule. Okay, it's not going to show because it's just a Word document. Okay, so it's not there. All you're going to see is your revised writing and that the quiz is due. Okay, so you need to go to July 10th. Get your blur log done. You should have about, I think probably about 33 pages maybe read. I'm thinking the first 3 chapters, it's a little bit more than that. That's about 50-some, 60 pages, but that's probably what your first blur log should be. You need to revise the writing. Some of you have such a good revision on your critique, that's all you got to worry about. And then you should be reading Gill chapter 4 and 5 and taking your quiz, okay? It opens July 11th, which is, I believe, oh, it should open July 10th, so I will change that for you, okay? I know that I have talked a very long time, so if you have listened to the end, you deserve a 5-point bonus, and you will get that by contacting me on Remind and telling me what you learned from my video.